Meghan Markle is making her West End debut. But she will not be alone on stage. Indeed, the Duchess of Sussex will be appearing alongside an eclectic cast of hundreds of very famous faces. The catch is, they're all puppets. They are the stars of Idiot's Assemble, Spitting Image the musical. As the show's director and co-writer Sean Foley explains, it's the biggest cast in the West End. It's also the most starry. It's the only time you'll ever see Greta Thunberg on the same stage as Idris Elba, and King Charles on the same stage as Stormzy. The bonkers cast also includes Tom Cruise, Tyson Fury, Nigel Farage, Michael Gove, Sir Ian McKellen, Daniel Craig, Fiona Bruce, Vladimir Putin, and even Paddington Bear. The plot is equally daft. Anxious that his kingdom is in chaos in the run-up to his coronation, King Charles calls on Tom Cruise to lead a magnificent seven, comprising Cruise, Thunberg, Markle, Fury, Elba, Ripoll and Angela Rayner, to take on the cabal of baddies, including Donald Trump, Rupert Murdoch, and Boris Johnson. Another blow for Andrew Lloyd Webber as new Broadway show closes after just 10 weeks. As it says on the poster, it's like a big West End show, but without the boring bits. Transferring to London's West End at the Phoenix Theatre after a sellout run at the Birmingham Rep, it's the first ever staging of the enormously successful, BAFTA and Emmy Award-winning, satirical television puppet show. Created by artists Peter Fluck and Roger Law and designer Martin Lamine-Nairn, the original TV show had an immense impact on British cultural life. It ran for 18 series between 1984 and 1996 and was watched every week by an eye-watering 15 million viewers, figures that any commissioning editor these days would sell their granny for. Revived for 2 seasons on BritBox in 2020 and 2021, Spitting Image confirmed the star status of well-known people from politics, showbiz and sport. For instance, Roy Hattersley, the deputy leader of the Labour Party from 1983 to 1992, recalls a taxi driver who drove them to a dinner in 2020. Don't miss Biscuits for breakfast at Hampstead Theatre Review. Latest The Queen of the West End, Gary Ellis tells kids to find something they love doing. Insight Mark Gatiss acting saves this insubstantial play, the motive and the cue. Review, Discover, he said, "Are you really Roy Hattersley?" I said, "I really am." He said, "You were famous. You were on Spitting Image." The enduring potency of Spitting Image is underlined by the fact that, nearly 4 decades after it was first broadcast, many moments of comedy gold from the show remain indelibly branded in the collective memory. Who can forget the deathless sketch in which then Prime Minister Mrs. Thatcher orders a raw steak while dining in a restaurant with her cabinet? When the waitress asks her, "And what about the vegetables?" Without batting an eyelid, the Premier replies, "Oh, they'll have the same as me." Such was the influence and reach of the show that it got to the point where celebs were begging to be caricatured on it. An appearance was seen as a sure sign that you had made it. The journalist and former MP Matthew Paris admits, "I would have killed several people to be made a puppet of." Sean outlines why, nearly 40 years after it first crashed into the national consciousness like a gloriously out-of-control clown car, Spitting Image remains such a compelling and well-loved creative endeavor. It is the satirical comedy brand of the last 100 years in the UK, he says. If you look back at the stuff they produced in the 80s and 90s, it's incredibly punchy. It's amazingly wild and anarchic. It's not just political satire, but celebrity send-ups and potshots at our culture in general. The comedian Matt Ford, who co-wrote the show with Sean and his fellow comedian, pub landlord Al Murray, recollects the massive and instantaneous effect that the TV show had on viewers during the 80s and 90s. Imagine seeing that for the first time. It's just incredible to see powerful, influential, famous people mocked in that way. What's great about Spitting Image and why it will always be relevant is the fact that Fluke and Law hit upon this brilliant way to take the mick out of people through puppets. That gives you way more license and allows you to say things you'd never say in person. The downside for the targets of the original Spitting Image is that it often cemented in the public mind an unfair image of them. But the show deliberately set out to be confrontational, with the producer John Lloyd asserting, "The more complaints we get, the better." Spitting Image, for example, crystallized the idea of then Home Secretary Kenneth Baker as a gigantic slug, sliming his way across the ceiling, and of then Tory party chairman Norman Tebbit as a leather-clad bother boy. In perhaps the most notorious example, Spitting Image portrayed the then Liberal Party leader David Steele as a pipsqueak carried around in the top pocket of his superior, supercilious political partner, SDP leader David Owen. In her biography, Tales from the Tap End, Steele's wife Judy details how detrimental that caricature was. David was almost fatally wounded as a political figure by the representation of him week after week on the satirical TV program Spitting Image as the puppet in Owen's pocket, she wrote. The caricature was well short of the truth, but it was what people saw, and what they believed. I could hardly bear to watch it and often left the room. Matt assesses why that particular caricature of the two Davids really nailed it. The reason why that was so effective is because it hit upon a view that the public would have thought of, but not in those terms. That's where the artistry can be very elegant. You're hitting upon a satirical grain of truth. People didn't go, "Oh, I don't recognize that description of him." They said, "That's so funny. That's exactly what he is." And when you hit upon that, it shows why public life is brutal. Sean adds that the Two David sketch is a classic example of satire making a genuine impression on the real world. If your perception changes like that about something, you will never forget it. Made in collaboration with Law, the new show is a remarkable technical achievement. A small team of puppeteers operates more than 100 life-size latex caricatures. Many, such as the former cabinet minister Jacob Rees-Mogg depicted as a praying mantis, are memorably grotesque. In this, it is possible to trace the comic lineage of Spitting Image back to the great visual satirists of the 18th century. The gargoyle-esque, handmade puppets possess real force. A double Olivier Award winner, Sean says, "The art of Spitting Image is so powerful." When you look at visual satire down the centuries, and people like Rowlandson and Gilray and Hogarth, Spitting Image is very much in that tradition. The director goes on to say the reaction at the Birmingham Rep this year seemed like a throwback to the wildlife satirical shows of the 18th century. It was like an unbelievable release of energy as they thought, at last somebody is up there roasting these terrible people ruining our lives. It was like reports you read of those crazy shows at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane in the 18th century. Ever since Geoffrey Chaucer ribbed the self-importance of authority figures in the Canterbury Tales, satire has played a vital role in our society. It has always been an important function of democracy to puncture the pomposity of the powerful. According to Sean, it's our job to create a grotesque comic version of our reality, so that people can see it and, crucially, laugh at it. And Matt chimes in, satire is important as a valve. First and foremost, it's a sign of whether you live in a democracy or not. When you look around the world, it is actually very fragile. If you examine some of the instincts in this country about censorship and no platforming, being able to take the mic is something to treasure. But crucially, Matt continues, satire has to be funny. The danger is sometimes that when you hear the word satire, you think, oh God, is this just going to be some sort of impenetrable long lecture? It's almost like going to church for people who are interested in the news. You're thinking, I feel like this is doing me good, but I'm not really that entertained. Whereas something like Spitting Image really does entertain. Matt adds, with Spitting Image, you're punching the bruise of the incompetent and the corrupt. But there's also something genuinely cathartic about going to a show where you can sit in a room with 1,000 others and laugh at the people who have been driving you mad. Another great thing is that the comedy is bang up to the minute. The writers have the ability to insert topical gags about incidents that have happened that day. The show had to be entirely rewritten 3 times during pre-production as the Prime Minister kept changing. As Matt puts it, we are living through an insane, abnormal, infuriating period, so the timing of this show couldn't be better. It's vital that we see our leaders lampooned with cutting satire and yes, whacked over the head with a big stick. What do the writers hope audiences will take away from the show, then? I hope they just can't believe what they've seen, says Matt. You want people to leave completely bowled over. Do you also hope that they come out of the theater wanting to bring down the government? Yes, obviously. But the problem with that is that if they did bring down the government, we'd have no one left to take the mick out of. Idiot's a symbol. Spitting Image the musical is at the Phoenix Theatre, London, from May 24th. For more information, visit spittingimagethemusical.com.